Welcome to A Connection is a Connection, the show where we take a break from business talk and dive into the personal side of things. Today we're sitting down with our guest, Doug Kling, to uncover the stories, quirks, and passions that may make him tick. Let's have some fun and get to know him like never before. But first, let's give a warm welcome to our guest, Doug. Woo! We are here to keep it light and fun, so let's hop into questions. But first, can you give us a brief introduction about yourself?
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me here. And it's like as I said, the older you get, the fewer times people are interested in what you have to say. Or because you know what, we all have to face reality. We all get older every single day, and I think what we did as far as habits and just normal activities now are just in their past. You know, we were just talking earlier about the electronic world. You know, just how far it's come in just several decades. You know, we used to watch a 19-inch black and white television. I don't think anybody right now would watch black and white television. You know, there was no color. I mean, well, at least we didn't have it. And, you know, just even some of the things like from a medical standpoint, you know, I think that, you know, medicine has come so far. You know, things that were fatal years ago are not fatal now. And, you know, we were talking about, you know, what the expectations were out of individuals, you know, living decades ago. I think the bar was much higher. You know, whether you were hurt, injured, or you didn't feel good, didn't matter. You know, you were going to work, you were going to perform, you know, in athletics. You know, I started playing football when I was 9 years old. Thank you. When I was 9 years old, and I really was glad for it because it was something. I think each of us are different though. Whenever we're doing some activity, it might be sewing, you know, it might be a sport or something like that. If something inside of you gets turned on and say, oh my gosh, I love this, I enjoy this, this is something that I want to do, then, you know, that's what happened to me. My mother, you know, when you grow up with two other brothers and no sisters in the family, things get broken. People, your other brothers are wrestling around with each other, we're throwing at each other, we're breaking things and snapping and driving our mother crazy. And so when we got to be like 8, 9, 10 years old, I was the middle child. She said, no, you kids are going to go out and start playing sports, baseball, basketball, and football. And basically just rounded us up in the car and took us out and signed us up for, you know, what was going to be the, you know, youth football, baseball, basketball, football. And so we were out of the house. And you know what? It took a lot of our energy. And you know what was fun about it though? Before, when you used to go around and just play around with kids and, you know, throw them on the ground or something like that, you would be penalized, you would be spanked or whatever. No, not now. Football, you can do it all the time and get patted on the back and say, great job, Doug. Good. You know, way to do that. And out of all the sports, I really enjoyed all three of them. But, you know, football was the one that I felt the most comfortable with. And I felt like, you know, especially when I got later on in life, junior high, high school, I started hearing about these stories about other players getting scholarships and going to college away from where they live, maybe thousands of miles away, and played on great teams. And I thought, oh my gosh, if I could only have that happen to me. And so it wasn't, when I got into a football situation, playing against other competition, there was something inside of me the moment we stepped on that field, like, dun da dun da da, you know, the band started playing. I was energized. I could just feel this like rush go through my body, and I felt like I love this game of football. I love running with the football. I love throwing the football, catching it. Most importantly, I love defense, where I could just hit people for as hard as I could and be congratulated. You know, not have to suffer any sort of punishment as a result. So the more they complimented me, the more I did it. And for, you know, so I started at 9, you know, through Pee Wee football. Then I got into junior high. I played junior high in high school. And I did other sports also. I was very good in baseball too. I had set the batting record, 526 batting average in my high school. That record stood for 30 years until someone finally broke it. I felt like I could play baseball if I really wanted to, but as I said before, I was telling you guys about writing letters to the coaches in my senior year. And you know what? Why not try to encourage the process? Why not try to make it, throw some things on top of the cake, that makes you more appealing. And so when I would go and request some attention from a coach in the area, they were all in the newspaper. Everybody read newspapers back then, watched television. There was no computers, there was no social media, nothing like that. So you were on a telephone or you wrote a letter.
Yeah.
Even to Santa Claus. I did that every year. And so, there was so much loyalty in each person, especially like for sports. If you grew up in Pennsylvania, you were going to probably be playing, in college, at Pitt or Penn State. And if you were in the pros, it was going to be the Steelers or the Eagles. And, those sort of things were very prevalent in everybody's mind. So when I grew up, I kept dreaming I was going to go to Penn State. And a really great coach, Joe Paterno, won a lot of games, a lot of great players, eventually went on to the National Football League. So my senior year, I wrote letters to Joe Paterno every single week. Dear Coach Paterno, I really, 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 really want to come to Penn State. That alone was enough to get Joe Paterno to visit me in high school.
That's insane. That is so insane.
When I was called down to the office and I saw Coach Paterno, I think I cried. I'm thinking, oh my gosh, he's going to offer me a scholarship. Well, just his being there was enough, because he told me that he really enjoyed reading the letters that I had written to him. He said, Doug, I can't give you a scholarship, but I just wanted to meet you and congratulate you on a great career that you had. Well, back then, there was no social media, there was no computers, no Facebook, so you weren't putting anything online. It was all newspapers. And that visit by him to me in my high school was in the newspapers, the Pittsburgh newspapers. You know what? People read newspapers back then. And so they read that Joe Paterno was at my high school. Didn't say anything about him not wanting me to come to Penn State. It just said he was really, really interested in Doug Plank. And I asked him to say that. And that was enough to get colleges in the area. I heard from West Virginia, University of West Virginia, Ohio State. I heard from Pitt. I didn't want to go to Pitt because they were still in the losing. Tony Dorsett, their all-star, all-American running back, was not in Pitt yet. He was a couple years behind me. So I had had enough of losing teams. I wanted to go someplace where everything was going to be winning. Even if I sat on the bench, they were going to win. Ohio State was that team. And when they reacted after seeing Joe Paterno come to my high school, put in a Pittsburgh newspaper, they said, that's how people recruited back then. They read stories out of newspapers. How many touchdowns, how many receptions, how many interceptions. That's what started the ball rolling. And when you're out of state of the school, like where you want to go is another state, you've got to reach out, because it's harder for them to find you. And so when that letter came out, like I said, the Joe Paterno in the paper, I never really thought much of it. But a week later, when I started getting a call from Ohio State and their head coach was going to come and visit me, it was a dream come true. And I just felt like, I didn't have a lot of options. But I wanted to go someplace that was going to win, and Ohio State was that place. And I knew that once I got there, I was going to be in serious competition with somebody else, because a lot of those kids were probably going to play in the National Football League. And that wasn't a dream of mine or aspiration or anything like that. I just wanted to get a 4-year scholarship and do it where I could be on a winning team. And I knew that at Ohio State, I could get that done.
That's incredible. We're so excited to have you. Thank you so much for being here today.
Really, this is not a big sacrifice for me.
We are so excited.
I love to talk, and because I always feel like it's not how you start, it's how you finish. In anything.
Yes.
Exactly. You can always get curious and things like that. That's why I enjoy meeting so many people all the time. I'm really a very good people person. I ask a lot of questions. I love to hear success stories. Nobody wants to hear about failures. I mean, I want to find out how somebody achieved something, whether it was in business, whether it was in sports. So any time I could meet someone like a Franco Harris, who was a big star for the Pittsburgh Steelers, I asked him a whole bunch of questions, and he was kind enough to answer. And a lot of other players and coaches, I just asked them, how can I get there? How can I do this? And they gave me answers. And some of them weren't the best answers, but some were great answers. And you know what? Once you get on a team, or you get invited or get a scholarship, you know what? The rest of your existence there is up to you. Because you could have a coach every day come and tell you, you need to get better, you need to lift weights, you need to learn the playbook, quit making mistakes. You know what? If you have no interest in not listening to him, you're never going to succeed.
Yeah.
And there's something, I remember a lot of times, even when I wasn't in practice, there was a voice inside of me that kept saying, Doug, you should be working out now. You should be studying. You got a test coming up. You got a big game coming up. Starting in high school was one thing. Trying to start in a major college football team, like last year, they won the national championship. That's a team you want to be in the best of the best. And to this day, when I was lucky enough to graduate from Ohio State and play football and not be injured and go into the National Football League, even though I was a 12th round draft pick, the time that I went to Chicago Bears and people found out I played at Ohio State, no one ever said, they go, where did you play, Doug? And I go, Ohio State. They go, oh.
It doesn't matter what place you're in.
It doesn't matter. Honestly, it's like, no, I practiced against a bunch of first round draft picks over the course of my career, for the 4 years I was there. Even the first year when I got hurt, like I said to you guys, I'm almost glad I got hurt. You know why? Because I was hurt in a fashion that I should never have happened. We didn't have shoulder pads on. There wasn't a full scrimmage. It was supposed to be practice, and we were learning, and we weren't tackling. It was the first day I got there. After that, I took on a disposition of, you're not going to get close to me. I don't care whatever else happens. I don't care what the play is, what the defense is. I'm going to hit you as hard as I can. And you know what? That voice inside of me it never shut up. It never shut up ever since I got injured that day. And it was like, Doug, don't let anybody close to you. And whether it's an offensive lineman, defensive person, it didn't matter. I'm not proud to say this, but I would hit my own players sometimes, trying to get to other players. When I'm going and I'm focused on a receiver or a running back, there are videos out there of me running over my own players to get to the other team. Because you know what? Nothing's going to stop me. And I'll deal with that. I'll deal with that player and that play later on. Don't get in my way, because I don't have good intentions. And you know what? Even somebody that's my size. Now I started lifting weights, and you know what? I was very blessed when I got to the Chicago Bears, because they had a weightlifting coach that was in the Olympics. He loved lifting weights. Not just for lifting weights, but just how much better you can become. We talked about it earlier. It made you a better football player. For those times that you needed that extra strength to tackle someone, to block somebody, you know what? It was there. That reserve was there. And the other thing is, when you get stronger and you get muscles on your body, it's hard to hurt you. You got to really, really be hit hard to have injuries. And here's the other great thing. When you did get injured, your recovery time was like 50% of what it normally would have been. You didn't need to be, no one needed to tell you to, go stretch out and do your extensions. And, I did all that all the time before I lifted weights. And here's what I would do. Our weight coach was also a psychologist, not literally, but in practice. He would give you communications every day. Clyde Emmerich was his name, from Germany, in the Olympics. He said, you know what? Not only are you lifting weights, why don't you imagine you were actually playing football? in what you're doing. One thing I love to do is I love picking up dumbbells. Dumbbells, you grab handles like this, and they didn't have weights. They were like iron balls on both sides. That's what they call them, dumbbells. When you're doing exercises like that, if you can imagine yourself being on a field, going through a game, trying to tackle someone, trying to push someone, trying to block someone, you started dreaming about that situation in your mind, and lifting these weights were just like part of it. It was like, when you can pick up a 100-pound dumbbell with your hands, so that's you're throwing up 200-pound dumbbells. The most I ever did one time was 32 times. I could pick them up off the ground, bring them up to my shoulders, take them down here, bring them up to my shoulders. Try doing that for 32 times. You know what? It's not that my shoulders and back got tired, my fingers. I've broken every one of these fingers, by the way. I've had well over, I can't tell you how many stitches I've had because I stopped counting. When I grew up in Western Pennsylvania, if you didn't have 100 stitches by 9, you were like a baby. They call you a sissy. How do you get stitches? I don't know. You run into things. It snows there, so we used to go sledding all the time. Some guys weren't paying any attention, would run in the back of cars and stuff like that on their sleds, or just fall off and the sled hit them. Just crazy little things like that. It really taught you, to experience pain and not be freaked out about it. Just say, okay, it's just something that's going to go away after I get some stitches in it. And the same thing true with football. There was a lot of times I played with players that needed to get stitched. They would get including myself. When you hit somebody so hard with a helmet, just that impact against your cheekbones exploded your cheekbones. You would get maybe a 10-inch, rip in your skin just from your helmet. And I got 2 helmets at home. One's Ohio State, one's Chicago Bear. Both of them were cracked. Wow. Last game that I played for both teams, I said, you know what? I'm like the last guy. I said, this is going to be my last game. I'm going the max distance.
Yeah.
In Ohio State, it was the Rose Bowl. For Chicago, it was against the Detroit Lions. And it was always bigger players, guys that weighed more than I did. And that's the other thing. There's not many 200-pound players running around in the National Football League. They're all heavier, stronger. They're big guys. So, it's funny. When people call you're a cheap shot artist and stuff like that. If you get in a car wreck and you're driving a Prius, a small car, or I should say, you don't want to hit a semi truck. You want to hit somebody your size. And so I didn't have that choice. All the running backs and things that I had to tackle, they were usually always heavier than I was. So the weights really created something else in me, confidence, to go full speed into something. That's the other thing. You can be as strong as possible. But you know what? If you have a fear factor inside of you and keep thinking you're going to get hurt, then you're not going to do that. You're not going to put 100%. You had to train yourself to say, I don't care what happens. That's the difference between great players and average players. Is that ability just to say, to suppress their survival instinct. So I don't know. You guys want to ask any questions?
We have some questions
Okay,
for
go ahead.
you.
All right, go ahead. Yes.
Okay, Doug. You ready?
Yes.
What was the most awkward compliment you've ever received?
You know what? Some of these compliments weren't very complimentary. When you're playing a game, there's people out there talking all the time, especially the opponents. You're I can't tell you how many times I'd go up and hit somebody and they'd say, that's it? That's the best you got? I'd say, until next play. Wait till the next play gets here. Now you give me some, I'm thinking to myself, I'm motivated now. Okay, I knocked him down to the ground. He wasn't running away from me. But there was players like that thinking, okay, I'm going to make him feel like he's, degraded, that he doesn't even hurt. The next play, I was bringing my best. I don't care if it was a lineman, running back, receiver, I couldn't hit receivers all the time because they were always way out wide. I could on the linemen. When somebody gets hit, like an offensive lineman is not going to expect a defensive back to hit him. So when I hit a lot of these linemen, they never saw it coming because they never expected a guy that's 50 to 100 pounds lighter than them is going to hit them. And you know what? They're human too. They go flying. You hit them fast enough, you build up enough speed, human beings can run over 20 miles an hour. Next time you're in a car and it's 20 miles an hour, just think, okay, that's what Doug Plank is running at.
Wow.
And you know what? When you hit something bigger and heavier than you are, you don't keep going after you hit them. It's like running into a wall. You have to really psych your brain out to say, I'm going to hit something that's not going to move. And I know there's going to be some damage. This whole thing about the hammer and the nail, you know, like one guy's a hammer, one's a nail. No, that is not true. It's mutual assured destruction. That's what it is. Mad. That's what mad is. Football. It's that's why, you know, I admire players that have the ability to do that. And it's not just physical. Because why aren't a lot of weightlifters in football? You know why? They're tough. They're strong, but you know what? They don't have that willingness to be able to be moving and run into something that you know is going to hurt you. And so you have to really train yourself mentally and physically to be able to sustain that kind of punishment week after week after week.
Okay. If your pet could talk, what's the one thing they'd expose about you? Do you have a pet?
I do. You know what? And we don't have a pet right now.
Yeah.
We had a pet, and it's amazing. You know, especially right now with television, you can watch so many interactions between animals and human beings, like on a pet friendly basis.
Yeah.
It's enough to make you cry. It's just there's human beings out there that even like wild animals that you would say, no way, there's no way a lion or a chimpanzee or whatever the animal is. You know what though? If you're a human being and you're around that animal for its entire life, that's all he knows is you. And how many times you've watched television where all of a sudden, even like years after they've maybe separated, the animal realizes immediately when somebody shows up that's taking care of them for years.
The monkeys.
They go over there like hugging. I mean,
Yes.
tears start rolling down my face. I don't even know why. I'm thinking,
So sweet. So what would your pet expose you
Yes.
about? What would they say about you?
you know what? It's funny. We had a dog for a while when I was growing up. But you know what? Dogs go to the bathroom in the houses. And this was a younger dog. So after like one or two, my mother was really a very neat freak, you know, as far as just cleanliness and all that. The dog usually lasts until its third poop, you know, inside the house. Then it was gone. And so we never really had a pet growing up. But, you know, myself and my wife, you know, she had pets all through her life. She lived in Ohio also. And it was, you know, she still loves animals. And we've had several dogs. You know, right now, though, I think now that we're older in life and we travel a little more than we did before because we had children and we were in one place and that's where we had our pets, our dogs mostly. Now we're like in the neighborhood. Everybody that goes on a vacation has to go out of town. They bring their dogs down to our house. So yeah, it's a blast. Honestly, it's so much fun. And it's funny, you know, it's like after like one or two times, like especially right across the street, we watch that dog like at least once every 2 weeks. When he knows we got like the front door open, he runs out of their front door. Their house is like across the street, maybe a couple houses down. He runs like he's on a chase. He's chasing something. He runs right across the street, comes running in our house. And because he already knows the house. He knows where he's at. He knows where he's going to sleep at night. No, I think pets are special. And and I'm not talking about snakes and stuff like that, but pets that you can actually give you the benefit of just showing appreciation for what you do for them,
Sure.
as far as how you treat them, how
Yeah.
you talk to them.
Mhm.
Yeah, they're the best. They're always there, and it's their expectations. They're not that willing to go ahead and change. You're not going to change them from one time to another. They don't really have any. They are in a very narrow mindset as far as good and bad. They're always happy. Especially if they're in a situation where they know you're going to take care of them, and show them attention. Rub their stomach, whatever it is.
Yes.
It's even the most biggest and scariest dogs. We've had pit bulls before, and people are like freaked out. They come into our house. Don't let him bite me. Where if you've ever shown them any harm or any reason to want to bite somebody, and they don't bite people.
Mhm.
It's
It's how they're trained.
it's how they're trained. It really is.
Yeah.
And so, no, we enjoy it a lot. I miss it because even like when they, nighttime comes, they're sleeping with us right in the bed.
That's so sweet.
They're-
Nice. If you could leave one lasting impression on everyone you meet, what would it be?
I think it gets back to that same thing I was talking about. Having grown up in an area where there wasn't a lot of wealthy people,
Mhm.
you were, even the sports teams in that city, Pittsburgh. It was a very blue collar town, and
Sure.
but the people were great. They would give you the shirt off their back, literally, and you had so many brothers and cousins and nephews, but everybody was pulling for you, and there was so much more celebration of all the holidays: Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter. They were all special occasions. Everybody got together. I mean, it's not like today.
Yeah.
It's sad to say. And as kids, you didn't really appreciate it until now it's gone. And you look back at it and go, wow, wonder why we're not doing that now? Because it's just the way things are, the way the environment is taken off. Uh, I'm not saying a good and bad standpoint, but it was just something I looked forward so much to, like Christmas, because there was always family events and seeing your cousins and talking to them. And the other thing too is I don't remember a situation where like anybody in your family was like across the country in another country. No, everybody was right there,
Yeah.
5 minutes away.
Nobody moved.
Nobody moved.
No.
No, your family reunions were like every weekend,
Yes.
and those were great memories.
Such a simple life.
Simple life. One of my grandfathers on my father's side had a cabin too in the area. It was on a lake, and they had like a motorboat. You could go fishing and a whole bunch of things, and it was opening up another door for the family. Now you could be with your cousins and uncles and aunts. Even on the weekends or for the holidays, not just at home, but
travel with them.
travel with them.
Mhm.
It's just the greatest memories
Yeah.
out of my life.
Yeah.
I just get choked up right now. I'm just thinking,
That's
damn,
so
those were the best
sweet.
days. Those were the best days.
Absolutely. Yeah, you don't see that much anymore.
No, not at all.